I'm Juliet Dryden, the Director and CEO of BISA, and I'm thrilled to be here in Columbus, Ohio at the International Studies Association conference. I'm here with Mike Bosia, the Executive Director of ISA. It's really lovely to see you, Mike.
It's nice seeing you again.
Yeah, really lovely. I wanted to talk to Mike because I have a sense, although there are a lot of delegates here, a lot of our BISA members and our European friends have not made it over the pond, and I get the sense that they haven't come because they're very perplexed by what's going on in the US at the moment under President Trump. We've, over the last year, we've seen all sorts of things. We've seen challenges at US university campuses, ICE raids, and now, of course, the war in Iran and all that entails. So I'm going to ask Mike what he thinks is going on.
So I think there's a couple of things that we can say are really true, and one of them is that a lot of members of ISA from Europe, but also from other parts of North America and other parts of the world, have decided not to join the convention in Columbus this year. A lot of that, I think, has to do with the climate in the US, as well as the changing US role in the world. I would say that we're entering this period of what I consider to be ungovernability. That it's not the society that's ungovernable, it's the governors who are ungovernable. The leadership, the social and political leadership, are kind of untethered from the norms and principles that have typically governed American life.
Interesting. So what do you think is going to happen? How do you think the American population are going to vote, for example, in the midterms?
So I think there's a lot of frustration with the economic productivity in the U.S., inflation, the kind of policies that inflate the economy, that drive shocks through the economy, and create a lot of confusion for individuals and families across the country. And that also affect the ability of people to travel. I think that's going to have a big impact. But we are also seeing, and I think this is really important for people outside the U.S. to understand, is that we also see a growing set of reactions to policies that are being sent down from the federal government. And we have to remember that U.S. Governance is very complicated. We begin with quasi-independent cities, and then modestly sovereign states or provincial governments, and the federal government. And in places where these three things align, we see one set of tensions. In places where these three things differ, we see another set of tensions. But we are tending to see a social reaction to policies that the American public are finding out of line with basically their own needs or their principles.
So can you give me an example?
Well, we've seen in Minneapolis, for example, the reaction to ICE raids. And that's in a state with a Democratic governor, in a city with a Democratic mayor, and a long tradition of civic activism and a very organized social movement culture. And that's been inspiring to a lot of social movements around the country. Recently, where I live in Vermont, there was an ICE raid searching for one individual. There was a public demonstration to try to block ICE from seizing that individual. He ended up not being in the house that they had targeted. And the local police worked with ICE to control the demonstrations. The Republican governor of Vermont condemned the conduct of ICE in that raid. So you do see that there are these places where opposition, criticism, and resistance are occurring when the most extreme policies seem to be the most prevalent.
And I suppose you can appreciate how watching those sorts of images on your TV or your laptop or whatever it might be appear to people who don't understand these things or who live elsewhere, in Europe and so on. And you're watching these things and you're thinking, what's going on?
Yes.
It can be quite alarming.
Yes.
Yeah.
As a queer person, as gay and non-binary, I understand interactions in difficult contexts differently than someone like you might. And I've experienced those kinds of interactions in places that others might feel safe, where I would feel less safe. And so I appreciate, though, I can walk the streets of the United States generally without regard to concern because I have a US passport and I don't meet the demographic qualifications for people who are being targeted through visual identification. I can appreciate, because of my own experience, that people who see this kind of conduct take that to represent the America that exists today.
Yeah. Okay, well, moving slightly to sort of America's image abroad and why academics perhaps have decided not to come to ISA today. What do you think, what do you think President Trump's legacy might be?
Well, that's a really interesting question. Other than a ballroom?
Yes.
It's a difficult question to really address because we're really, not even barely out of the first year of the second Trump presidency. We still have 3 more years to go. And the legacy is going to be determined by the conduct and results of the midterm election, where senators in 1/3 of the states and all members of Congress are going to be up for re-election. And that dynamic is going to shape the second 2 years of the Trump administration. And that means that there is potential for change within the way the administration works, or there's I wouldn't say equally, there is a potential, unmeasurable at this point, that the election's not going to succeed in the way that we would want it to, meaning in the fairness and openness and clear results of the election. Okay,
so you think that it's not going to be decisive, those midterms, one way or the other? No, go ahead.
Yeah, so I would say the midterms could be decisive if the margin of victory for one party over the other is clear.
Okay.
And if the process going in is uncorrupted.
Yeah.
We have a measure in Congress that will restrict voter registration to people who can prove citizenship. And that's either through a passport, a real ID, which is an enhanced driver's license based on a birth certificate, or a birth certificate itself. And the number of states that offer enhanced IDs is very limited. The number of Americans with passports is very small as a percentage of the society. And not even everyone has access to their birth certificate. That creates a situation where large numbers of people could be disenfranchised if that law is passed. Now, it's stuck in the Senate. It's going to be subject to a filibuster. It's unlikely that it's going to pass. But there's also talk about other actions that the federal government is going to take without regard to the way state law is administered. States govern elections, not the federal government.
And this might come into effect before the midterms.
But that's the concern that people are expressing, that this dynamic could happen.
Yeah.
It also could be a dynamic after the election, right? So that the Trump administration questions elections in key states, especially if those elections are close.
Yes, exactly, Okay, interesting. Okay, so do you think, next year ISA is in Atlanta?
Yes.
Yes? And I guess you're hoping for as many people as possible to come, and we hope our BISA members and our European friends come. Perhaps it will depend on how things go at the midterms, or how people are perceiving what's going on in the States.
Well, we have a process of intake for the annual convention that starts in June, when the submissions close for the program. And then we launch the program in the fall, and people register for the convention after that. So we're not actually going to be in a position of knowing the outcome of the midterms before people have to make their decisions about whether or not they're coming to Atlanta. On the other hand, there are lots of dynamics that go into a particular convention location and site. And some of those are the political dynamics that are bearing down on this. Some of those are the transport dynamics, right? So air flights and connections may be more difficult for people, or more expensive right now. And so that could have generated less interest in the conference. Atlanta is a hub city for a series of major airlines. It's easy to connect from throughout the world. Atlanta has a different reputation than Columbus for lots of Europeans. Columbus is an unknown, where Atlanta has a deep history in the civil rights movement and social justice movements. And so that may resonate with members in Europe and the UK in ways that Columbus, despite its history in the Union movement and in the Underground Railroad, despite those things that are really resonant about Columbus and the open and welcoming city that it is, people in Europe don't know that about Columbus as much as they know the history of Atlanta.
Yes, yeah. Okay, well, that's fascinating. Thank you very much. Well, I'll certainly be at Atlanta next year, and obviously before that, we've got our own conference in Brighton, which I believe, Mike, you're going to be at.
I'm hoping to be there. Yes.
Yeah, so that'll be very exciting. I think that was a very interesting conversation. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Nice seeing you.
Nice seeing you.